All right. I want to thank Michelle Hurstis for being with us in the last segment, and we'll get back to open lines and your phone calls a little bit later on. Right now, a special guest is joining us here on the Ringside Hotline, the DA for the 22nd Judicial District here in Louisiana, St. Tammany and Washington parishes. The Honorable Warren Montgomery is joining us here on the program. And Mr. DA, how are you, sir? Good morning.
I'm doing great, Jeff. Great to hear your voice. Looking forward to hear from your listeners.
Warren, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us and giving us an update on what is happening with your office during this whole crisis period. How are you guys dealing with this?
You know, Jeff, there's that saying, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And I wish we weren't in this situation with this pestilence, with the coronavirus. But we're taking advantage of it, to tell you the truth. Many years ago, when I first came in, we had a movement towards the increased use of technology to drive down our costs and increase our efficiencies, to give people speedier trials, which we've been able to do, and to be more successful in prosecuting criminals, which we've been able to do. And one of the things that happened then is when we encountered this situation of having to, I don't know if the right word is quarantine, but to have to work remotely, we were able to do that quite rapidly because people had laptop computers, and we had made a big effort to go paperless, and we had made great strides in that direction. So we've taken this crisis, and we haven't wasted it. We've taken this crisis, and we've used it to improve our efficiencies, to improve our ability to operate remotely.
Excellent.
And in fact, we're doing that. We're having people, when they're arrested now, that we're having bond hearings by using Zoom and other technologies so that we don't have face-to-face contact with people. We're taking guilty pleas from individuals remotely, electronically. And so we no longer the sheriff no longer has to transport people from the jail to the courthouse. So our security has actually increased as a result of all this. So I'd say, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like, again, you're making the best of it, and kudos to you and your team. So, you're talking about increasing the safety, Mr. DA. What about what we've seen in some areas where folks have actually been released from prison? Is that going on in St. Tammany and Washington parishes?
Well, that's a great question and a great observation because there has been this call for kind of a mass or blanket release of prisoners from jails or prisons. And of course, let's make sure we define those things. Jails are the facilities that are local. We have one in St. Tammany. We have one in Washington Parish. There's one in New Orleans and Jefferson. Each parish has a jail. And those people, generally speaking, are being held in the jail pending trial. They're waiting for their trial. Mm-hmm. And then a prison is a facility that's operated by the state or is contracted with the state. And those people held there are being held because they've been convicted or pled guilty and have been convicted of a crime. And they're held there to serve out their sentence. So one of them is meant to be a temporary facility for people pending trial, and one of them is intended to be for people who are serving their sentences. So, this big move to get people out of jails, let's say, the local facilities, and say, we just need to let everybody out. Well, of course, that's ridiculous because some of those people are awaiting trial for very violent crimes and very dangerous crimes. And many of those people who are awaiting trial, frankly, have prior criminal convictions. And so I've opposed this blanket release of people from jails and blanket release of people from prisons. So we have, on the other hand, we recognize that there is a public health issue. And what we don't want is to have this virus get into a jail setting or a prison setting where people are in close contact with one another.
Right.
Where,
could be endangered.
Yeah. We don't,
But
just because.
do we have any information about an epidemic in the jails and prisons?
No.
I mean, here in
not,
the area?
not locally. I think
Okay.
there's a situation at a federal facility in Oakdale, Louisiana, where there's a great deal of concern. And actually, there's 3 different camps, if I'm not mistaken, at the Oakdale facility. And there's an issue there, but we haven't had any major issues, certainly not at the St. Tammany Parish Jail or the Washington Parish Jail with coronavirus. And again, the one extreme is we don't want someone who's, we don't want a 17-year-old arrested for possession of pot is a first offense to be put into a jail and get coronavirus and die. That's not a fair system. On the other hand, we don't want somebody who's gets arrested for armed robbery, for which there's a probable cause finding that he's in there for armed robbery or rape or murder, and then that person is released because they might get coronavirus in jail. So it's a balancing act, and what we've done is we've gone through the jail list with the public defender, with the defense counsel, and with the judges, and we've gone through case by case, and where we can release people safely, where we think we can take that risk under these conditions, an increased risk, we've done it. So far, it hasn't come back to bite us. We haven't had the situation like you had in New Orleans. I forget the guy's name, but last week where he was released, he was apparently had been arrested numerous times for drug dealing and other offenses. He got out, and 2 or 3 days after he got out, he was mowed down with automatic rifle fire in New Orleans. We haven't had that so far.
Good.
And I can tell you one other thing, Jeff. We're getting ready to go out and charge some people with, crimes of a violent nature, and they're getting ready to go into jail because they're not doing what they should be doing. So I'm not putting people in jail unnecessarily, but I'm not going to let people stay out there and commit violent crimes and prey on our society.
Because, people are advocating for the safety of criminals. We also need to advocate for the safety of innocent civilians, and we don't want to be releasing people that could terrorize innocent people in the community. So that is that should be our primary consideration.
Absolutely. And, one group of people says, well, we need to, and it's so ironic, they said we want to release the prisoners or the criminals from the jail and make us criminals, make us prisoners in our own homes. That's not the way this thing's supposed to work.
Exactly. DA Warren Montgomery with us, the 22nd Judicial District. He covers St. Tammany, Washington parishes, and we always appreciate his time. Jeff Carrier here at Ringside on WGSO. Our talk line 504-556-9696. So the courthouse is pretty much shut down, DA Montgomery?
Well, you can come in the courthouse and you can get some work done on a very limited basis. The clerk's office is fully operational. So if you have some business at the clerk of court's office, you can come in there and get your work done. On the other hand, what we can't have under these circumstances are jury trials. Because who wants to come in as a juror and be in close contact with people you don't even know for a day or a week or longer to hear trial and be in front of these witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. That would be really a recipe for disaster under these times. So we can't have jury trials. But other than that, the courthouse is open. However, we do, getting back to the use of technology, I ask people, look, if you can send us an email, if you can call us, if you can get your work done without that face-to-face contact, let's do that. That's preferable. So we're getting about,
so it's
Jeff,
virtual court, right, Warren?
Virtual court. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And we're having our hearings. If someone wants to plead guilty, we'll let them plead guilty. And maybe they'll get maybe they'll be released from jail. And because they've got time served, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want your trial, well, we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer until this thing passes and we can give you your jury trial.
Okay. Hang on with us because we'd love to come back and talk to you about how to take precautions in this environment because there could be some scammers out there trying to manipulate and take advantage of unsuspecting elderly folks and citizens. I want to talk about some of these scams that have been uncovered. DA Warren Montgomery with us, Jeff Crouere here. It's ringside on WGSO. Our talk line 504-556-9696. And let us know if you've been the victim of any of these scams. Seem to be always something we've got to deal with whenever there's a crisis, a hurricane, a flood, a tornado. People take advantage of folks in need, and it's really sad. This is no exception. All right, Jeff Crouere with you. Lot going on this busy Tuesday morning. Quick timeout. We'll be right back. Sadly, there's some scams that have been perpetrated by folks trying to take advantage of people as they're worried about this coronavirus, and we need to make folks aware of it. So let's bring back our special guest, the DA, Warren Montgomery, to talk about that. And DA Montgomery, has your office been made aware of some scams going on right now?
Absolutely, and it's an unfortunate fact that, and you just brought it out, that some people, evil people, want to cash in on the panic of the coronavirus. They want to prey on those of us who are good-hearted, who may be scared or maybe frightened or maybe generous. And so there's a lot of people out there, who, in fact, we estimate that there are about 2,000 or more electronic attacks every day of people trying to pose. For instance, pose is the WHO, the WHO, World Health Organization. They changed some of the letters. Instead of, for instance, on WHO, instead of it making a WHO, they'll put a zero. And you go to WH0.org and try to donate money, and it's actually a scammer. There's also these people who, isn't that something? And so the generous people among us who are trying to help other individuals who are suffering, in fact, they scam us out of our money. And, of course, then there's all sorts of websites. A lot of it, I mentioned Zoom that we're using in our virtual court. There are people posing as the Zoom website. And when you go there, they, to get the Zoom account or whatever, they'll steal your information. And we know, for instance, that the government is, helping us and sending us money and all this kind of stuff. And of course, to these criminals, to these vultures, that's a perfect opportunity. And they'll actually call you on the phone and say, "Look, I'm from Medicare, and I need information. I can send you a free COVID test kit, and hey, I just need your name, your Social Security number, your Medicare number, et cetera, and I can send this to you." And of course, it's a scam. So there's a lot of that going on. I just want people to be very careful about the information they give out.
In the past, I guess people would be visited. People would go door to door, scammers. Then I think as time went on, most of it would be via phone call. And now you're talking about computer type hackers and others sending suspicious emails and trying to get your information online. So, I mean, they're moving with the times and becoming more sophisticated as we go along, and always got to be wary of it. Has your office had to prosecute anybody so far, DA Montgomery?
We haven't received any cases for us to prosecute that I'm aware of from the sheriff's office, and of course we prosecute the local violations of state law. I'm sure we're going to have some, and I would recommend to your listeners that if they have someone who they think is taking advantage of this situation, that they can do. There's a couple of different groups they can go to. One of them is the National Center for Disaster Fraud. National Center for Disaster Fraud. They have a website under that name. There's also a phone number you can call, area code 866, phone number 720-5721, 866-720-5721. And you can even email them at disaster@leo.gov. disaster@leo.gov. And so there are places you can go to report this type of activity. Of course, you can call the sheriff's office, you can call my office, or you can call any one of those websites those numbers and that website that I just gave you, and they're standing by waiting to receive your calls.
Another issue that I worry about in times like this is price gouging, where people are going to try to ramp up the price on items that folks need, and it seems like there's a real worry about supplies, real worry about people taking care of their families during this crisis, and certain items have been out at the stores, and folks seem to take advantage of that and jack up prices, hoard them, and try to make a profit on that. There are laws against price gouging, correct?
Absolutely, there are. And, of course, price gouging is just a close relative to these scam artists that we're talking about. It's the same motive, people taking advantage of the rest of us who may be, particularly the most vulnerable of us who are in a difficult situation. And there are laws about that. And you can call my office at 809-8383. 985-809-8383. And we're standing by and looking forward to receiving any calls concerning price gouging. Fortunately, we haven't received anything to date here on the North Shore in my jurisdiction, which is really a compliment to the good people who live over here. But, you got to be prepared. And, while we're talking about all these negative things, and there are a lot of negative things happening in this area, and I want your listeners to be aware of it and have their antenna up when they get these fraudulent scam calls. I have to acknowledge, and I think I need to compliment all the wonderful people in our community who are doing just the opposite. And you may remember, I think it was in the newspaper maybe 2 days ago, Peyton Manning donated a bunch of money to a foundation, and what they're doing is buying. I think they went to Drago's restaurant in New Orleans and bought meals that they then distributed to different hospitals where the doctors and the nurses and the medical staff are working 24/7 to overcome this crisis. And isn't that great? What great people we have, and that's just one example. There have been other Saints players. And there's even a guy in the North Shore who worked with me, Tony Lamont, an attorney. He put together a 501c nonprofit where, and it's called Be a Hero, Thank a Hero. Be a Hero, Thank a Hero. They've got a website, and they are taking contributions to do the same thing, where we contribute money, and that money is being matched by other wonderful people. I think it's the Al Copeland Foundation and the Tujag, Steve Tujag and his lovely wife. They're matching contributions to buy meals from local restaurants here on the North Shore, and then take those meals to different hospitals here on the North Shore. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So just as we have these scammers on one hand, and then we have these heroes on the other hand.
Yeah, and we saw that during Katrina. We saw people taking advantage of folks in need, but we saw many good people step forward and do some great things. And as you say, that's coming out in this case too. One more thing I did want to bring up, D.A. Montgomery, as people are confined to their homes and unable to really work or do their normal activities. You worry about potential increases in domestic violence, in suicides, in mental health problems from people that are forced into situations that are uncomfortable in close quarters. And have we seen any of that on the North Shore, any increases in any of those issues since this whole thing has been really on lockdown for the past month?
We've seen an increase that I'm aware of in the domestic violence area. There's no question that there's been an increase in that. And of course, we're on top of that. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, it's my job. If someone's going to engage in domestic violence and beat up or harm someone else, then they're going to be arrested and they're going to be put into the St. Tammany Parish Jail until we resolve the situation. And on that subject, again, we're all locked in our homes to some extent. We're all in these close quarters. One of the things that I've started to do with my family is every morning we get together and we pray as a family. And then every evening, we get together and we pray as a family. And that has had a dramatic impact in our household. It's something we should have been doing all along. And so I know this is not a religious broadcast, but I encourage your listeners to bring their faith back into their life and take advantage of this situation. That tell you what, if you want to stop violence, say a prayer. And it changes your whole attitude, it changes your demeanor, and it changes the demeanor of the people around you.
I mean, that is a great suggestion, and there is no doubt that works. There's no doubt that works.
Does. Always has.
And yes, great advice. And in our final few seconds here, if you could give your contact information out again, DA Montgomery, for folks out there that might need the services of your office during this time.
Thank you. Well, I've got a website, damontgomery.org, damontgomery.org, and you can email me at that website. Of course, my office is open. We have a limited staff, but you can call me at area code 985-809-8383, 985-809-8383, and we're here to serve you.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, DA Warren Montgomery. Hope to have you on soon and update our listeners on what is happening. And folks, when we come back, we'll open up our phone lines again, open up our email bag, and lots of interesting comments have been flowing in. We'll touch on as many as we can. To participate, it's 504-556-9696. Jeff Crouere here on WGSO. We're 990 AM, WGSO.com. Also on your mobile devices with the TuneIn Radio app. We'll have a brief time out right now. Time to get the latest from Louisiana Radio Network.